Well, good afternoon and welcome to Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase, our weekly call-in town hall and radio show. I'm State Senator Amanda Chase, your weekly radio show host, and I serve the 11th Senatorial District, which includes all of Amelia and Colonial Heights and most of Chesterfield. I'm a Christian, conservative, Republican, and in that order, and I stole that line from Vice President Mike Pence. I like that line a lot, actually. And I serve on 4 committees: Health and Education, Transportation, Local Governments, and Privileges and Elections. And as many of you know who've tuned in week after week, many of the topics that we address on our show are issues that constituents have brought to my attention. So we've covered a lot of topics in the year that we've been on the air. I also want to give a special thanks to WNTW 820 AM The Answer, and now we're on FM 97.7 for the opportunity to provide this free public service to you each week. And just a reminder, this is a call-in radio show, so if you have a question, give us a call, and you'll want to write down this number. It's 804-454-1366, and we're going to do our best to answer your question on the show. So let's get started. Today we're going to be discussing a number of issues with Senator Frank Ruff, who is one of my colleagues in the Senate. And Senator Ruff, are you on the line?
I am, Amanda. Welcome. Glad to be with you today.
Well, we're really glad to have you here. And, I have really enjoyed having our Meet the Legislator segment because I've been able to study up on each of our legislators and probably get to know you in a way that we probably don't have time for when we're at the races from January to March. And so I understand you're a University of Richmond graduate. That's great. That's in my neck of the woods.
Yep, it's closer to you than it is to me.
Now, what did you study when you were at University of Richmond?
Sociology.
Sociology. Wow. What were you thinking?
When I began the process, I was thinking about the ministry, but I decided that about halfway through that was not the direction I was going to go, and it was too hard to swim back upstream. So I rode the tide on down, rode the current on down.
Well, that comes in handy in the General Assembly because there are a lot of issues that come up. We need both a minister and a sociologist, so it's great that you have both of that. Now, you were born in Bedford County, Virginia, so that where Senator Steve Newman is as well. And what I also find really interesting is that you're a retired owner of a furniture business in Clarksville. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I had a store on the lake there, on Bugs Island Lake, and when somebody offered to buy it, I sold it, and I said, I started sending out resumes and said, I don't want to leave the area. So I said, what can I do to stay in the area and make a living and support a family? So I started a furniture store, and understanding that there was not a big market for in a small town. So we advertised and sold nationally, and did okay.
Now, how many years did you have your furniture business?
I guess about 17 years.
Wow, that's a commitment right there. Now, did you have family members to help you with the furniture store?
No, my wife and I found out that we could not work well together. She was a teacher, but let's
be honest, right?
That's right. But the kids were too young, so it was not to be.
Well, I'm going to have to get your take on different furniture suggestions someday when my kids outgrow our house. We've decided we're keeping the same furniture that we had, which is actually unfinished furniture that I actually stained back when we first got married. And kids are pretty rough on furniture, so we've decided that we're going to wait till all the kids move out, and then we might get some furniture. But it's interesting. So I just want to point out to our listeners who have noticed that you are not an attorney, and for them that's a good thing because they feel like there's too many attorneys in the General Assembly. So I think they're out there clapping that we have a small business owner that's serving us in the General Assembly. And I would also say, with respect to my friends who are attorneys, we do need attorneys as well because we have some really good attorneys in the General Assembly, many who have been on our Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase. And so you need a nice mixture of different backgrounds and so, but I am actually very delighted that you're like myself. We're just small business owners, so that's great.
It is, but and you're exactly right. We do need a cross segment of the society. It's good that we've got teachers. It's good that we've got small business people, lawyers, farmers. Every constituency group out there should have somebody that they feel like they can touch, other than just their own representatives.
Now, I'm also showing that you're a former member of the Mecklenburg County Board of Supervisors. How many years did you serve on the Board of Supervisors?
4 years.
4 years.
The redistricting came up during that time frame, and being the only Republican on the board at the time, somehow I ended up in a district that went from 60 miles, from 100 yards from one end of the county to from the Halifax County line to the Brunswick County line. You had to go into North Carolina to get to parts of it. So
wow.
They wouldn't give me a boat or an airplane. So I said, well, I can run myself to death by going to the General Assembly.
Wow. So at that point, I will say you graduated and you became a member of the House of Representatives, and where you served from 1994 to 2000, which is incredible that you had that experience in the House. And now, since 2000, you've also served in the Senate for 17 years. You have a lot of experience.
Yeah, it may be too much, but I was at several years ago when Bob McDonnell was governor. I was going to introduce him at the Methodist Center in Blackstone. And the guy that was going to introduce me said, what do you want me to say to him? I said, don't say much. And so he said, don't say much, but he's been around government for a quarter of a century. And it really hit me. That didn't sound good at all.
Well, I can say this as someone that's brand new. I mean, I guess I've been there, gosh, can't believe it's almost 3 years now. Time flies when you're having fun. But I will say, as a freshman legislator, no one can teach you what it means to be a state senator. There's no class you can take. There's no life experience that you can have that I think prepares you for that. And I think it is important. And yes, I am a supporter of term limits, and I put that bill in every year. But I do so appreciate members in the Senate who have been around and understand how things work and the intricacies of it. We certainly don't want to get into a situation where the bureaucracy is controlling what goes on in the Senate and the House. And so
several years ago, I went down to Arkansas, and they had gone to term limits, mm-hmm. and it was a disaster for them because you could only serve 8 years. So the first 2 years, you really are on the learning curve. Mm-hmm. And then before you know it, you have to be chair of the committee or you have to be Speaker of the House. And so there is no institutional knowledge down there. It is all in the bureaucrats that stay there and live there as full-time employees that guides things. And that's a debate we could have for a couple of hours, but there are give and takes on both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. You also have 4 children and 2 granddaughters. Now, are all your children grown at this point, or do you have any at home?
My baby started as the librarian at one of the elementary schools in Hopewell this week. So no more. We're completely empty nesters.
You're completely empty nesters. I have a little ways to go. My youngest is turning 16. We've graduated 2 from high school, 1 from college. And I still have 2 in the public school system. So I've got a little ways to go. But that's quite the accomplishment right there when you get the kids out of the house and producers and paying taxes and all that good stuff. So we're going to go to a break in just a little bit. But I did want to kind of tee this up so that when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about Trade and Economic Development Committee of the American Legislative Exchange Council that you serve on, as well as the Agricultural and Rural Development Committees for the Southern Legislative Conference and the National Conference of State Legislators. And that's a mouthful. We're going to break it down for you when we come back. We're going to come back in about 4 minutes. We've got like 30 seconds to the break, but we're going to come back in 4 minutes, and we're going to be talking today with Senator Frank Ruff. And you're not going to want to miss today's segment because we have a lot to talk about. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase and Senator Frank Ruff from the 15th Senatorial District. Now, Frank, tell us a little bit about your district. What is it made up of? What counties?
Well, I used to say it was 4 times the size of Rhode Island, and then I looked at the national map and realized Rhode Island looked awfully small. So now I define it as 2 miles across the James River from Jamestown to 7 miles from the city of Martinsville. So anywhere in Southern Virginia, you know where those 2 locations are, so you know the distance involved. But it covers most of Prince George and Dinwiddie, Nottoway, Lunenburg, Brunswick, Mecklenburg, Charlotte, part of Halifax, part of Campbell, part of Pennsylvania, and part of the city of Danville.
Wow, that's fantastic. And that actually covers a lot of our listening audience right now. So if you are actually in Dinwiddie, Prince George, we actually go all the way down to the North Carolina line. They should be able to actually hear you. So hopefully
good.
They're having the opportunity to listen and tune in. And I just want to remind folks that if you'd like to call in and ask us a question, the number here is 804-454-1366. So let's start off. I was reading on your website, and it says that you're a strong believer that every proposed law should be put to the following test. And I think these are 4 great questions. Number 1, does it solve a problem that cannot be better solved without creating a new law, which I think is awesome because so many people come to us with an issue, and they're like, we want a law, we want a law, we want a law. And I agree with you. There's so many things that we can accomplish without a law, just by having conversations with folks. And a good example would be, and thank you for signing the letter that the Transparency Caucus put together, asking the Senate and the House clerks to video, beginning this coming session, our committee hearings. And so, that did not involve a piece of legislation, but it was a letter that a lot of us legislators signed on to, and thank you very much, Senator Ruff, for signing that letter, that got some action to it. And so now for the first time in Virginia's history, our committee meeting is going to be live streamed, and I'm assuming recorded. I probably should not assume that, but it will give access to constituents to tune in while we're having session from January to March. So I think that's a good thing.
Not only will they be able to do that, but they will be able to recover that from the library that will be created to save all those committee meetings, so that they will be able to go back and ask for a particular committee on a particular day, and they will be able to listen to it at their leisure, at their time.
And I think that's great because a lot of the times folks can't get off of work to come down to the General Assembly and lobby for a bill or to find out what happened to a bill. And as we both know, but I don't think I realized as a citizen legislator, a lot of times you'll take an original bill and there will be a substitute to that bill. And that substitute completely changes and alters the nature of that bill. So where you might have been initially against that bill, maybe there's a substitute that's put in that completely changes it. So you do like that bill. So it's just important to allow constituents to be able to have that real-time access to what we're doing. I mean, we're working on behalf of you, our constituents. And so we want to be available and accessible. And once again, want to thank Senator Ruff, for coming on today. So let's take a look at the second question. It says, does it cost the taxpayers of Virginia more than the value of the problem it is trying to solve? I love that. This is good. That is so, a lot of people don't realize this, but when we come up with legislation we have to take a look at the fiscal impact. Is there a financial impact? What seems like a really small, inane bill that wouldn't have much consequence, you would be amazed at the amount of work that would require personnel to be involved, to do data entry or whatever, to keep track of whatever it is that's being passed. So we've got to take a look at the fiscal impact. So I think that's fantastic. The third question is, does it give one individual or a group an advantage over other individuals or groups? Now, this one is a big one for me. Everybody, I always laugh and I say everybody wants special treatment because they somehow are more special than someone else, right? This group is more special than that group. And it's like the only people that are paying the taxes are those of us who are not special, right?
And since you're the one that sits on education and health, you see that every day of the committee meets. It's one healthcare group against another healthcare group, each one trying to protect their turf or keep somebody else from encroaching on their property.
That's exactly right. We do see a lot of that on health and education. Now, there is a fourth test that you have on there, and it says, does it keep faith with the Virginia and the United States Constitutions, and most particularly the first 10 amendments that were so elegantly drawn to protect the rights of the people? That's such a great litmus test because, I try to keep a positive attitude about this, but sometimes you look at legislation and you think, I have to look at this law. I'm not afraid to talk about controversial issues on my show. But last week I was talking about the statutes and everything, and I said, what does the law state? What does the Virginia law state about this? And so I think it takes a lot of the emotion out of a discussion and forces us to take a look at the law. And, so that was kind of my response last week when we were talking about the monuments. What does the law state? And what is the process involved if I want to change this law? What is the appropriate means to do that? Is it go through city council? Well, no, because the Virginia state law says that you must go through the General Assembly in order to get that law changed or appealed. So
you have a good read on that that law. Yes, exactly right. It makes no difference when the statute was put up. The question that some people try to connect to that is when it was put up. That's not the question. The question is, can you be taken down? That's the effective date, not the day it was put up.
That's exactly right. Well, I just want to encourage folks. You have a great website here, senatorfrankruff.com, and there is a whole list of all the bills that Senator Ruff has sponsored in past sessions, going all the way back to 2001, and you can just click on that link. Let me just ask you, of all the legislation that you have patroned, which one do you think you are the most passionate about?
Probably the workforce training. Because when we started looking at it, the issue for young people is in their latter days of high school and the years after that is they really don't know where they want to go and what they want to do for the most part. I'm sure there's some exceptions to that, but they are influenced by parents. They're influenced by guidance counselors, by teachers. And kind of push it one way or the other. And as I tell people, if you have a D+ grade average in high school, D as in dog, not as B in bonus, but D as in dog, somebody's trying to encourage you to go to college. And that may not be where you should be going. Of the four kids, one of them started at Tech. We toured various schools and just didn't have a whole lot of enthusiasm, but he ended up going to Tech, and he came home at Thanksgiving and said, I want to join the Navy. I said, finish a semester and you can. And he did. And they taught him how to do the electronics on airplanes.
Now, Senator Ruff, we're going to have to go to a break real quick, but I want you to hold that thought.
Okay.
We'll be back in 4 minutes. Senator Ruff on Cut to the Chase. Welcome back to Cut to the Chase with State Senator Amanda Chase and State Senator Frank Ruff. And yeah, that's right. You actually have two of your Virginia state legislators on the phone, and you can actually give us a call at 804-451-366 and let us know what's on your mind. But before we went to the break, Senator Ruff was telling us about his experience with his 4 children and his son, who decided that, you know what, I think I want to go serve in the Navy. So I apologize for cutting you off on the break there, but Senator Ruff, tell us about your son.
Well, he ended up learning a skill with the engineering or the electronics on airplanes, and he enjoys doing that. He's in Japan now. He knows when he gets out he can make great money. So that was kind of a kicking off point. When I started looking at what our community colleges were offering, most of them, or a lot of them, have a 2-year program from welding. Well, that sounds interesting, but it does not take 2 years to learn how to weld. It takes maybe 4 weeks 6 weeks at the most. But because our community colleges are paid by the state for degrees, for associate's degrees that they deliver, they don't get paid for workforce training at that time. They were forcing these programs on to 2-year programs. So if you were and this was right during the period when the recession hit. So if you lost your job in 2008 and you had a child or two, you may well say that program won't start until, say you get laid off in February, the program wouldn't start until August or September, and then 2 years before you would get the certification you needed. The breadwinner would either be bankrupt or he would have to drop out of the program and take another job. So we started down an effort to reimburse the community colleges in a fashion that gave, if you had a national certification, a recognized certification, then the college could be reimbursed just as they are for associate degree programs, full credit programs, and that has been spectacular. It took us 3 years to get it through because roadblocks here or there. Finally got it through, and the first 6 months it did fantastic, and we had to put more money into it to carry it through this year. So to accomplish something that employers wanted, parents and kids needed, it made you feel pretty good.
Well, I think that's great. And for those who want to look this up, it's Senate Bill 576. It's called the New Economy Workforce Credential Grant Program. And that was passed and signed into law back in 2006. We're going to go back to talking about the New Economy Workforce Credential Grant Program that you were talking about. And let's talk about how this helps. Like, you have 4 kids, I have 4 kids. Mine are all college age kids. And, a lot of kids don't know exactly what they want to do after they graduate from high school. A lot of kids are preparing in middle school to figure out, what they would like to study. They just don't know. I mean, I know kids that graduate from high school who still don't even know, what they want to do. We could both argue we also know 40-year-olds who don't know what they want to do, and they grow up as well. So it's important that we as legislators have the opportunity to engage with education and figure out exactly what workforce needs are out there with employers that are in the area. There are a lot of positions that are open that employers have that they don't have a workforce that is skilled to actually complete those jobs. So anyway, we'll be back right after the break. Cut to the chase with Senator Chase. Thank you. Welcome back to Cut to the Chase with State Senator Amanda Chase and State Senator Frank Ruff. And, I just want to let you all know I'm very thankful to WNTW, The Answer, for providing this free public service to you all. It's not something that we have to do, not something that we're required to do, but as a part of being a legislator and being accessible, accountable, and approachable, it's something that I feel very passionate about. So we really do appreciate those of you who call in and express your opinion. I mean, that's what we're here for. That's one of the complaints from many years ago. People would say that, our legislators are not accessible. And so I've done everything that I can to ensure that doesn't happen. And just really appreciate Senator Frank Ruff for coming on today to be able to provide an opportunity for y'all to ask questions. And again, the number is 804-454-1366. I don't know if you saw the headline today, but it says that Gillespie supports looser marijuana laws and criminal justice reform plan. And, there's different bills that come before the General Assembly, and they generally fall in three different categories. Sometimes they support recreational marijuana. Some say I just want medical marijuana. Others are saying I want criminal justice reform in general. And Republican gubernatorial nominee Ed Gillespie called Wednesday for a loosening of Virginia's marijuana laws, raising the state's grand larceny threshold and ending driver's license suspensions for unpaid court costs as a part of a broad effort to reform the state's criminal justice system. He proposed ending criminal charges for simple marijuana possession for the person's first two offenses, saying the third time you need to know better, and at that point you're subjecting yourself to the criminal justice system. So I want to get your opinion. Again, it's 804-454-1366. Now's your chance. Let us know how you feel about that. I can tell you personally, as a mom of 4 kids, 4 teenagers, I want to see test scores that show where loosening these laws is going to help our kids. I think you're going to be hard-pressed to find it. I don't think it's going to help decrease the amount of marijuana that our kids have access to. And I personally haven't seen any test results that show that it's going to improve test scores for our kids. So, I think we have to be very careful with that. Now, Senator Ruff, I'm just curious, do you have an opinion on where do you stand with looser marijuana laws?
That's an interesting question. I've had a number of people say, hey, we ought to just back off the laws and not worry about them because everybody does it and all that kind of good stuff. But the reality is that the people who deal marijuana do it not just for the drugs, but more importantly for the money. So if they can't make money on selling marijuana, then they will shift and try to sell other products that will be more destructive. If you say, okay, we're going to sell it to adults, and it's illegal to sell it to children, there'll be a great effort to sell it to more children. Because if you're used to making big money on the street, you're going to continue to keep trying to do that. So that's a dilemma that we've got to deal with. Should people spend years in jail for it? No. Should they pay fines for it? Yes. Somewhere between those two, I think it should be evaluated on a case-by-case basis, and we shouldn't be making the taxpayers pay $25,000 or $30,000 a year to keep somebody incarcerated. But we shouldn't give them. We shouldn't make it so easy that they are prying on our children.
I agree with that. And I do agree with the reform that talks about ending driver's license suspensions for unpaid court costs as part of a broad effort to reform the state's criminal justice system. If they have these court costs, how are they going to pay that if they're, in the prison system? You know what I mean? So, that's a challenge right there that I agree with. But, I have supported legislation that would help folks who have cancer in that particular situation. I think we need to take a look at the clinical results, the clinical test that show. I mean, we need to do these studies, and I know that Senator Norment put in some legislation that would require a study to be done, and we're waiting, and that's on decriminalization of marijuana, if I remember correctly. It's a complicated issue, and a lot of my friends who are in public safety are completely against any type of changes with the law as it relates to marijuana. And if you take a look at what they do for a living and what they see on a regular basis, it's not gonna help us. And if you ask a lot of those folks, because marijuana has been proven, and I've even met in the Chesterfield County jails with some of these young adults, talking about how they got involved with harder drugs like heroin and other opioids, and they're addicted and they can't get off of it. And marijuana was actually used as a gateway drug to harder drugs. And so I am very concerned about whatever action we take and how it affects our kids and our next generation. So, we have a number of folks that come to us who have, kids that have seizures. We have people dealing with PTSD, cancer patients, lupus, you name it. And so there are medical issues. And I have supported a pharmacy board regulated, kind of like any other drug like you would have that's out there that's a little more controlled and keeps it away from our kids. So
I think the medical issue is just a completely different issue than the issue of marijuana as a smokable way of getting high.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I think we're going to a break right now. Or do we have a minute? Okay. So when we come back from the break, we're going to be talking about a number of other issues that have come up. We talked about the Virginia candidates. There was Ed Gillespie and Frank Northam, who are our nominees for governor, had a little bit of a debate yesterday at a Clean Water Forum that was put on by the James River Association and the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. And moderator was Quentin Kidd, who is a political science professor at Christopher Newport University. And they covered a number of things. So when we get back, we'll talk a little bit about that. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to Cut to the Chase with State Senator Amanda Chase and Senator Frank Ruff today as our special guest. And I don't know if you saw this in the paper today at the Richmond Times-Dispatch Metro section. It talks about yesterday's debate between Republican nominee for governor Ed Gillespie and Democratic nominee Ralph Northam. And this was organized by the James River Association and the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. Did you by chance get to go to that, Frank?
No, I'm afraid not. I've left the house at 7 o'clock this morning and didn't get a chance to see the paper at all.
It's been a busy day, but there's going to be a number of these debates that will be coming up, and I just encourage folks who are able to attend. It is very informative and very interesting. And a lot of people are surprised. I know one of the big issues that I've taken up has been the coal ash issue. We have a Chesterfield power plant here in Chesterfield, and we've worked very hard to make sure that the ratepayers are protected and that they're only paying for resolution of the situation of the unwanted coal ash once, not twice. And so was hoping that they would talk a little bit more about that in their debate. But both pledged to continue implementing the total maximum daily load limits that they have reduced the amount of nitrogen and phosphorus that make it into the bay, creating oxygen-killing algae blooms. And that's even in spite if the federal government, as President Donald Trump has proposed, cuts the funding for that. So anyway, I just thought that was an interesting tidbit. There's so many things that I wanted to talk about. Optima pulls out of some Virginia markets today. That's another big news item. That
one you need to really focus on. And you probably need an hour to talk about that.
We're going to talk about that next week. It's funny you should say that. I've been talking to leadership. I have a friend of mine that is a healthcare provider in this field, and I'm getting the scoop on all this. And we as legislators need to be ready, or it's going to be a huge disaster come January.
It's going to be a disaster. Excuse me, didn't mean to step on you, but it's going to be a disaster before then, because you've got a lot of people in their 50s and early 60s who are on private policies with Anthem or one of the other companies, Aetna, and since 2008, they may have developed an ailment that now means that they won't, if they're not covered under that and if they lose their policy, they're going to have a tough time getting a new policy at any price. And in areas like Danville area, there are not going to be any carriers. Aetna's out, Optima's out, and Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna's and Anthem is out. They are in a world of hurting. So we've got a problem, and they're going to lose their insurance by the end of the year, and before we get back into session.
Well, Senator Ruff, we want you to come back on the show. We are currently out of time, but everyone needs to stay tuned next Thursday, because this is what we're going to talk about, healthcare and issues that we're having where insurance companies are pulling out. So stay tuned next Thursday from 4 to 5 with Cut to the Chase with Senator Chase. Thank you, Senator Ruff.
Thank you, Amanda.